Hey guys, welcome back to another knife time episode. It's been a really long time since the last video I've done, so I figured it was time for a really cool video. And of course, today I've got the Rockstead RYO in front of me. Very interesting knife, and surprisingly there wasn't any decent video review of this knife on YouTube when I checked, so I thought it's the best chance to do a quick video for you. This knife is actually going out to its new lucky owner today, and he's gonna be very impressed with this knife. So I thought if I do a video, you guys would be impressed with the overall quality and the craftsmanship on this particular knife. So I'm gonna try to keep it really short and sweet, so let's get into it straight away. I must apologize in advance because the knife is fully polished and it might throw the focus off a little bit, and also it's an absolute fingerprint magnet, so I'm going to be wiping it down throughout the video. I got to mention a couple of very interesting interesting points on this knife. You notice straight away a really unusual blade shape and also an unusual handle shape for Rockstead. It is kind of different to other knives that they do. They usually do really sort of traditional Japanese styles, but this one is very different. Firstly, the blade is, or the knife overall was inspired by the friction folder, the quintessential Japanese friction folder, which is called the Higonokami. If you guys search the Higonokami friction folder on the internet, you would see pictures and you notice that it's very similar in profile to this, but obviously this is a modern take on the Japanese friction folder. It's not a friction folder, it's a folding knife, so it's a modern take on it. There's a lot of really interesting features to these knives that we're going to get to it one by one. So firstly, the name of this model is RYO. Something that was interesting to me, that this knife was actually inspired by a Higonokami. It would be more appropriate if they called it a Higo, but they already have a knife called Higo, so they called it RYO. And RYO in Japanese, as far as I search, means good or cool, which is a good fit because this knife is certainly a really cool knife. I mentioned a few new things on this particular model. First one being a full titanium handle. So Rockstead usually uses a hardened aluminium alloy for the handles, which is kind of really durable and it's lightweight. At the same time, it keeps the cost down. But for this particular knife, they have gone with a full titanium, which I'm not complaining about. It's still lightweight, far stronger than aluminium. You're stronger than steel, or just as good, and it's the material of the modern knives, to be honest. I mean, titanium is the best material you can have on a knife handle, in my humble opinion. The other addition or a new feature that they've got on this knife for the first time, they haven't got it on any other knives, is the button lock. It's a very interesting button lock system, and it's quite different to button lock that you would see on other knives, and I'll explain shortly. And then they have this concealable clip system, that's what they call it. So I start with that concealable clip system because it's the most interesting feature on the knife. As you can see, the clip is on the spine rather than being on either side of the blade, or the handle I should say. And the way it works is, when you want to use the clip, you just pull back on it and it comes out, and now you have a fully functioning clip. If you want to pocket carry and use the pocket clip. If you don't want to do that, if you want to just slip it into your pocket without using a pocket clip, or let's say you took the knife out of your pocket, now you want to handle it, now you want to use it, you wouldn't need the clip anymore. So you simply press down on it and it will disappear, and then you got a almost flush pocket clip. Other than that tiny lip that is sticking out, everything else is kind of flush, and it blends in with the handle. there is no hot spot, I should say. It's really comfortable. You even that lip, you won't even notice it when you have it in your hand. I'm really pressing down on it, and this is where the lip is, and you can see I'm really pressing hard. Yeah, it leaves nothing. So very cool feature. Something really interesting about this clip feature was that Rockstead actually developed this in their own factory. They came up with the idea, and they worked on it, developed it, and then after they did that, they realized that there was already a US patent on this a similar clip system. So that US patent was filed by a guy called Joseph Caswell. I actually went to check the patent, and in my opinion, it's not exactly that. It has some similarities, but anyway, the Rockstead has done the right thing, and they contacted the patent owner and actually licensed this. Although they didn't copy it from him, they developed their own, but later on, unfortunately for them, they realized that it was already done by someone else. So good on them for doing the right thing. It's a very cool feature, and makes this knife so much easier to carry, believe me. I've got no issues with pocket clip on either side of the knife. It doesn't personally bother me, but having it on the spine and having it concealed, it is really a great advantage. The other thing I'll mention is the button lock. That it's a first time for Rockstead, but this button lock is very different to other button locks, and you notice it if you look at it from the side. It's almost flush to the handle as well, but when you open the blade, it pops. Again, a very neat feature. You close the knife and the button lock stays in. Now I'll show you one more time, a little bit closer. Check this out. It pops out, but when you're not using it, it remains not flush, but very close to being flush to the handle, which is another neat feature. Let me wipe it down because it's a fingerprint magnet, and then quickly show you the blade, which is my favorite part on the knife, of course. And check that mirror polish on the blade. It is crazy polished. You would struggle to find any other brand doing this kind of polishing on a blade. So now Rockstead calls this a production knife. I mean, if this is a production knife, it simply puts a lot of custom knives into shame, because the level of polishing, the craftsmanship, and the quality on these knives are insane. So they so humbly call it a production knife, but if you want to call it a production knife, it might as well be the king of all production knives, in my opinion. One of the reasons for these knives being pricey is obviously that mirror polish, because it's all done by hand and it takes a hell of a lot of time to do, especially considering that this blade is made from ZDP 189, which is an extremely hard blade, extremely hard to work with, really hard to sharpen, and even harder to get that mirror polish on the blade. Speaking of hardness, Rockstead does some some insane hardnesses on their blade. This particular one is hardened to 67, if I'm not wrong. Let me check the certificate for you. So each knife actually ships with this certificate that has a picture of the knife, serial number, and all the information. So this is ZDP 189, as you can see, and it's hardened to 67 HRC, and the blade shape is Honzukuri. So Honzukuri simply is convex. That's what it means. The handle is titanium anodized, and it's got all the measurements. Weight's only 124 grams, which is really cool. Very lightweight. They even have the clip material, SUS 440C. Don't know why you would mention that, but you have it here, and also you've got the date of manufacture. So the 67 hardness is incredible. Now if I get you a close-up on the ricasso, you see that little divot on the blade, and that's from the hardness testing. So they test every blade individually for hardness, and they proudly leave that divot on the ricasso for you to see that this has been actually individually tested. They just don't throw a number on the certificate. And the other really good part for me on this knife is obviously this crazy handle. Let me wipe it down one more time. Excuse me. Now if you look at it up close, you see that magnificent sculpting on the handle. Absolutely lovely. It dances off the light really nicely, and it shows you that you know, it's just mesmerizing to look at. And apart from aesthetics, it's practical too. That ridges on the handle gives you a bit more purchase and a better grip, obviously. And also you have a jimping on the spine of the handle, and then jimping on the pocket clip itself helps you with the grip. It's fairly raised, but it's not that aggressive to dig into your fingers or yeah, it's not annoying for sure. And then I mentioned one of my favorite parts of this knife being the button lock. So you can't thumb flick it because the detent is really hard on the button lock, which is a good thing. It retains the blade when you don't want to open it, especially this blade being that crazy sharp. You don't want it to accidentally open, so it's good to have a hard detent on it. But I just love the sound of the action when it opens. Just have a listen. So you've got the first click to release the detent, and then you've got the lock-in click. Very nice action. I certainly don't mind the traditional one-hand opening with your thumb. Just push the thumb stud out, opens with no problem. You can't flick it, but it's a traditional knife. It's not meant to be. Just as I mentioned, everything about this knife screams quality. It's just on a different level. Once again, it's called production, but you know, I'd simply put a Rockstead beyond and above many other brands that claim custom or mid-tech. And that's basically a credit to the Japanese mindset and manufacturing excellence. And you know, they do everything to the best of their ability, to perfection. And that's one thing that you notice with a lot of Japanese brands, that they always under promise and over deliver, and I absolutely love that. I actually have a couple of things to compare for you with this knife, and two of them are knives and one of them is actually a watch. And one thing that I noticed when I was doing this video is that I actually happen to have another knife in front of me, which is quite similar in a couple of ways. So this is a Crkt Swindle by Ken Onion. It's designed by Ken Onion, is made by Crkt. A couple of similarities is you know, the size is very similar, but the most important part is that clip system. Let me get this out of the way. Okay, so the clip on the Swindle is also on the spine, but unlike the Rocksted RYO, it doesn't retract or doesn't conceal into the handle, but still out of the way, sort of blends into the handle when you don't want to use it. But when you use it, you just simply lift it up, and yeah, you can slip it into your pocket when you don't need it. It sort of blends into the handle and gives you a clean look on the handle. Also, the ridges on the handle are sort of create that similarity between the two knives. The price obviously is ridiculously different, so I'll get this out of the way. I also have another Rockstead here. This is a full frame line lock actually. This is the Rockstead side with the topo handle. It's also a titanium topo handle. A good friend of mine was kind enough to offer me this, and I actually, you know, I jumped on it straight away. Couldn't say no to this absolutely magnificent topo handle. But the main difference between these two knives is the thickness. If you check the side profile, you'd notice that the RYO is extremely thin comparatively, and look, it's super easy to carry. The side doesn't have a pocket clip, so it has a leather slip. That's how you're meant to carry it. I certainly don't mind the handle thickness. It's very lovely to hold. It fills my hand. But again, for everyday carry, if you want to chuck a knife into your pocket and have it on you for, you know, the better part of the day, definitely the RYO is the one to go with. And now the other thing that I wanted to compare this knife to is my lovely Grand Seiko watch. So this is the Grand Seiko multi-water dial SGBK 005. The reason I brought this one out is that just like Rockstead is the king of the production Japanese knives, Grand Seiko is obviously the best watch manufacturer out of Japan. And something that was very interesting to me is obviously the Zaratsu polishing on these Grand Seikos. That Grand Seiko is actually known for the level of polishing and finishing they do on the cases, hands and indices. That's what Grand Seiko is known for. Very similar to Rockstead. And what's interesting is if you look closely at the hands, they are actually inspired by traditional Japanese swordsmithing, and the hands are beveled on both sides and the bevel is completely polished. Hopefully you can see it on the video, and that is inspired by Japanese swords and basically Japanese knife making. So I found it really interesting. I thought while I have it here, I'll show you this. Overall, Rockstead RYO, one of the coolest new knives from Rockstead. If you haven't got one, if you've been contemplating buying one, certainly go for it. You won't regret it. It's one of the best EDC carry knives. For the price, you get a lot of bang for your buck. It's crazy sharp, and they even have a free lifetime sharpening and grinding program. If you ever happen to chip the blade, or if you need sharpening, just simply send it back to Rockstead and they will take care of it and send it back to you. That's it for this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll try my best to have more videos for you in the near future.